Why has everybody been going crazy lately? Have you been wondering? Well, I'm going to explain it to you today. Hello, everyone. Dr. Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity here, and I've got a very special scouting report that I'm sharing with the public, and it explains how we got here and where we're going. Look, we're in the middle of the fourth turning, or the crisis stage. It's underway. Everything's at stake. If global war is the somehow unavoidable outcome of all this, well, then literally everything you love about your life is at stake, including your life itself. Now, look, our path through this, if we're going to have one, it must involve a clear-eyed view of how we're wired up. I mean, humans, right? What truly drives our behavior? What can we do maybe to alter it in time so that we can actually avoid that truly awful outcome of, say, global war? I'm not sure if Europe can avoid it at this point. Now, the answer to this begins with noting a few things about ourselves that, frankly, aren't all that flattering. You know, all problem solving must go through to the root itself. So that's what we're doing, a root cause analysis. Now, here I'm going to connect our current events to those of our evolutionary path, and I'm going to ask and answer this question, which is, do you have what it takes to survive the revolution that's underway? Now, those who can't or won't face the truths that we're going to discuss here today, I think they're destined to continue to angrily lash out. They're going to impotently throw cucumbers out of the bars of their cage, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. And they're going to just experience fits of rage, but impotent rage. They're going to be out of the game. Now, what do I mean by fourth turning? Fourth Turning is a book by Strauss and Howe. I've interviewed Neil Howe a few times, wonderful guy. And it talks about how we pass through these cyclical parts of evolutionary history or cultural history. And one of the key defining traits of the fourth turning or crisis era, besides war, is loss of faith in our governing institutions. Now, think about the faith we've lost in government institutions, financial institutions, health institutions, educational. Now, it's a very big list. And if you look at this, let me full frame this. You can see fourth turning way over there on the right. It's a decisive era of secular upheaval when the values regime propels the replacement of the old civic order with a new one. And it's kind of marked by maybe a global financial crisis. It could be war. And multiple signals point to this being the final crisis stage here. And that should end sometime around 2033. But between here and there, that is going to be tough. Now, question, what happens when humans gain access to a system, say one that's tied to, I don't know, money or political power, say an election system, right? And they realize they can game that system without any consequences. Okay, my theory is simple. They're going to cheat. They're going to cheat. Even more than that. As Bastiat said way back when, cheating or plundering, when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men and women in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. So give these systems enough time, cheating doesn't just sort of happen. It becomes a way of life. It's passed down through convention and custom until those within the system barely even are capable of recognizing their actions is immoral, right? That's what Bastiat was getting at here. Now, history and science and human nature all back this up. So let's explore how cheating starts, how it spreads, how it sticks. The way I look at this is, here's my premise. This is the premise for today. And you need to understand this. It's very important. Humans exploit systems when risk is low and gain is high. You know, we're opportunists. That's what I'm saying. Humans are opportunists. It's baked into our biology. Now, behavioral economist Dan Ariely, who I've also interviewed a few times, in fact, he ran a really nice series of studies with the Peak Prosperity Tribe a few years back. Got some great results, by the way. That was fun. Dan, we should do that again. He says, look, Dan Ariely says here in this book, The Honest Truth About Dishonesty, he shows how people cheat. Just a little when they think they won't get caught. He calls it, it's the fudge factor. You pad an expense report, maybe tweak a vote count, maybe skim a little profits, right? It's not outright villainy, right? It's just a nudge over the line when the risk feels kind of low. Ariely says that the first dishonest act, then, is the most important one to prevent. AKA, this is the slippery slope philosophy. You get started, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you are greased all the way down. This is just how we're wired. Now, evolutionary biologist Robert Trivers, he takes this deeper in a book called The Folly of Fools, arguing that deceit is a survival strategy. We're wired to exploit advantages, especially in systems like markets, elections, where money exists, where rewards, say wealth and power, they're tangible, especially when oversight is lax to non-existent to, in fact, maybe being morally glorified. Now, this was a interesting review by Neil Van Leeuwen about The Folly of Fools. I like how he framed the beginning part of this. So here's from the beginning of that book review. Neil here, Van Leeuwen is writing, quote, "It's an intriguing evolutionary puzzle. Why, we may ask, would natural selection equip us with sensory and reasoning capacities designed to give accurate information about the world, only to give us this trait, the capacity for self-deception that undermines that accurate information at critical moments in our lives? Like, what is this self-deception all about? Like, come on, nature, why'd you wire that in? It's kind of a weird thing. It's as if evolution were a cruel parent who gives us sophisticated cognitive toys but restricts our ability to enjoy them properly. And the fitness value of accurate information seems so obvious, right? Survival and reproduction depend on knowing where to find food, where the predators are, who your mates are, who your enemy is, and what your abilities are for dealing with the challenges of your environment. But self-deception seems to threaten such hard-won informational gain. So why was it not selected out? Why are we built this way? And knowing that we're built this way gives you critical insights that other people don't have. Now, I don't struggle with this at all. I just accept this kind of stuff, right? And Trivers, in his book, posed it this way. He said, "Together, our sensory systems are organized to give us a detailed and accurate view of reality, exactly as we would expect if truth about the outside world helps us navigate it more effectively." So far, so good. Carrying on. But once this information arrives in our brains, it's often distorted and biased to our conscious minds. We deny the truth to ourselves. We project onto others. See if this reminds you of anybody you've heard about lately. We project onto others traits that are in fact true of ourselves and then attack them. We repress painful memories. We complete completely false ones, rationalize immoral behavior, act repeatedly to boost positive self-opinion, and show a suite of ego defense mechanisms. Now, again, how and why did this particular evolutionary thing get started, right? It's a good question. I'm going to have to leave that for later. It's a whole other subject. But for now, let's just agree. Let's hold on to this. It's a well-documented observation about human behaviors and wiring. This is it. This is just how we're wired. So we'll just accept that. We can explore why later, but the what of it, that's what it is. Now, in the 19th century, we know that America's robber barons, right, industrialists like Jay Gould, gamed the stock market with impunity. Gould's manipulation of the Erie Railroad shares, it wasn't a one-off. It was a masterclass in exploiting weak regulation. No jail time, no real pushback, just profits. Now, a system open to rigging like that with no one to stop it, eventually it becomes a fertile ground sprouting entire ecosystems, supporting it and glorifying its activities. At its core, it all boils down to this. Humans are just like any other organism. We want that. We want a free lunch. We want the easy life. That's just how we're built. Here's the thing about this, though. You start a little bit of cheating, and the cheating doesn't stay small. So let's consider election fraud, right? In a 2012 study by Danielle Adano and Nassos Rusias called Does Cheating Pay? They found that when misconduct goes unpunished, of course, it warps democracy itself. How? Well, parties that cheat win more. Competition shrinks, and soon the whole system tilts towards cheating. And if you don't cheat, you know what happens? You lose. So guess what? You cheat. Eventually, that becomes the moral code. I mean, after all, your side, you're the good guys, right? And what starts as a single act, that Dan Ariely, that first act that slips you down, that fudging that vote tally, it becomes a playbook. And it spreads. And eventually it becomes machines so fraudulent that entire lists of documented vulnerabilities get entered into the Georgia court system, like we see here. There's the document case and number down there, a lot of text. We're not going to go through all that. I'll just note that they noted 7 critical vulnerabilities. Here's 6 of them, right? You can read through these. These vulnerabilities are so profound. Each one of them is a deal killer, and yet you think they're not actually vulnerable. A vulnerability is a weakness you didn't expect, and it just sort of showed up. These were built in on purpose, full stop, okay? And an actual IT and cryptographic expert weighed in on that and said, yeah, these machines are super bad. In fact, just this one, just number 5, this alone. When I said, remember, if there's low consequence for getting, low risk for getting caught, low consequences, number 5 says that these voting machines contained numerous unnecessary Android applications, including a terminal emulator that provided root shell access. That means you can come in, change stuff, and leave, no audit logs. You can't get caught if you know what you're doing. Because of that, you now have to prove to me that cheating did not happen. It's not incumbent on me to prove that cheating did happen. You show me a system that has power, privilege, prestige, money involved, and humans, and it has a capability coded into it to allow cheating, you have to prove to me that cheating did not happen. Because I know that humans are primates. We are wired to cheat. Therefore, it happened. Now, what's fascinating is Raffensperger, the Georgia State Secretary of State, when confronted with that court document, said, well, you know, this is see the top one of June 21st, 2023. The election isn't going to be till November 2024. It's in June, the year before that. He's like, it really wouldn't be practical to upgrade the voting software. There just isn't time. And then that didn't fly. So on June 29th, he said, well, you have to just disregard these reports identifying vulnerabilities. It's no more than conspiracy theories. Raffensperger, this is I forget how many pages. It's like a very thick document. It's fully documented. Conspiracy theories. Would you believe conspiracy theories? Right? It's crazy talk. All right. Okay. So here's the thing. Here's the kicker. Over time, cheating stops feeling like cheating, right? Bastiat, he saw this coming when plunder becomes a way of life, right? Whether it's monopolies, gouging consumers, cronies, siphoning public funds, people stealing elections. Look, it just gets legalized. It's no longer theft, actually. It's business. It's politics. It's just how things are. The moral code shifts to match. Now, Trivers added that psychological twist. We deceive ourselves, he said, to justify it. That's how we justify it. We deceive ourselves. The railroad tycoon calls this price-fixing industry leadership. The vote rigger calls it securing the will of the people. You know, after a while, they actually believe it. It becomes their actual moral code. It's not this cul-de-sac of corruption that you root out and expose and they hang their heads in shame. They will go to their graves believing with self-deception that they were in the right because their moral code was fashioned around the cheating. It's a rationalization process. Now, think of Wall Street in 2008, right? The meltdown. Risky bets. Those were all financial innovation until the house of cards fell. And really nobody faced any consequences for that. And guess what? The game rolls on. Nothing got fixed. Now, all of that leads to what I call Martinson's Law. If people are given a chance to cheat with a low possibility of getting caught, a significant number of people will cheat. And as the possibility of getting caught drops towards zero, the probability of cheating goes to 100%. This is just simple observation about humans, right? I'm not stuck with this whole idea that we're fundamentally all good and we're tempted by the devil and we stray off the path. The path to righteousness is narrow. You know what the big fat wide path is? Cheating. Okay. Now, this was astonishing because we just had this thing where Elon Musk came out and called these computers, 14 computers he found in the U.S. government, magic money machines, meaning they just are making money. Not the magic money machines at the Federal Reserve, where we all know they're already creating money. Not the magic money machines of banks, which already create money when they issue loans, but just government computers, right? This speaks to a level of fraud and corruption that's off the charts. It led me to issue a very rare alert for my subscribers. And so there's the first alert, came out on March 17th. I've since had 2 more updates to that, and I'm now putting this piece out in public to begin to explain why this is so startling and just why I'm so sure that we have systemic, endemic cheating. And it's because nobody got caught. 14 computers with no reconciliations, just issuing payments, and nobody's ever gotten caught. Nobody's ever lost their job. Nobody's gone to jail. Nobody's been swinging from a yardarm. Because none of those things happen and enough time has passed, this is not just how things are. It's now glorified in a moral code. The people operating this believe in their hearts of hearts they are good people doing the right things, even though it's very obvious to us on the outside they're plundering, they're stealing, they are cheating, they are immoral people. But they don't see it that way. And that's the thing that I'm here to explain and talk about. Okay? And as well, if you come to Peak Prosperity, you'll get updates, you'll get great advice. I am constantly on the job for my subscribers. They are very happy. If you're not a subscriber, you really should become one, because you need to understand where the world is going. You have to get this context to be able to make the decisions you have to make so you can be resilient. This thing is not going to fix itself. First step is understanding what's happening so that you can begin to adjust your thinking, your belief systems, your finances, your portfolios for reality. So, Peak Financial Investing with Paul Kiker, you see in that second thumbnail down on your left. He can help you figure out where to put your money to survive and thrive in these troubling times. And then my most recent update, which just came out yesterday afternoon, about a little less than 24 hours ago, talking about making the case for Elon's magic money machine. So this is looking at it from a system standpoint. Now I'm going to explain the psychological standpoint of all this. All right. Now all this stuff, this isn't just a theory, this stuff we're talking about here. It is a lens for today's world, right? That's what we're providing, this lens. Money systems, from crypto pumps, central bank policies, they thrive on opacity, right? Especially as we sail under full power into the fourth turning, an era defined by crisis, loss of faith in our governing institutions, all of that, right, as we discussed. Now, Elon here revealed the existence of these magic money machines, okay? This potentially undermines the very concept of money and also fairness, right? If cheating pays and no one's punished, well, why wouldn't it spread? Of course it will. And once it's spread enough, it becomes custom. It's taught in boardrooms, CIA boot camps, is coded into law. Question, can it be stopped? Can it be stopped in time? Can it be repaired before catastrophe strikes? Is this just the normal arc of empire? Empires start, they grow, they die. Maybe they die for the same reasons. Maybe it's just, so the wrong things get codified into law. Now, anthropology actually hints at the root of this, though. Anthropology gives us a hint. And Brian Hare, I love the work that he's done. His primate research here, it suggests that cheating emerges in any social system with weak enforcement. Chimps will routinely make choices based solely on personal gain with no regard for the outcomes of one of their fellow chimps. That's what that part in yellow down there says. The main result across every study they did was that chimpanzees made their choices based solely on personal gain with no regards for the outcomes of a conspecific, a fellow chimp. These results raise questions about the origins of human cooperative behavior. Indeed it does. Look, we're humans. We're not chimps, but actually we're no different. But we take it further because we don't just make choices based solely on personal gain. We then make complicated systems around our selfishness to make it all seem okay. And so that leads to this mechanism, right? Over time, unchecked cheating embeds itself into institutions and culture. That's the mechanism. It's just over time. So this has all been going on for a very long time. If you've seen the JFK papers released that have just come out, you find out we may not be the good guys. And there's been a lot of double dealing and really things that would actually have you call into question things like, are we the good guys? Just how bad is this? Wait a minute. Are there any lines we wouldn't cross? Does starving children sort of fit into some political gain that seems important to us, and so we would do it? That's what those files just released. I'm going to have to do a whole episode on that sometime. All right. I think now, back on track here, that a lot of what we're up against comes down to very typical human cycles of expansion contraction, right? You breathe in, you breathe out, empires swell, empires crumble. The fourth turning eventually becomes the first turning again. Winter turns to spring. But knowing the underpinning biology is like a superpower. It allows me to spot things that others struggle to fit into some rational frame. Now, if I would have us remember, humans aren't rational. We're rationalizers. And we can learn about ourselves, a lot about ourselves, from monkeys, as I've just been mentioning, right? But if we want to avoid this nasty fourth turning thing, we're going to have to understand ourselves again in that unflattering way to understand who we really are. And I think monkeys give us a bunch of insights. So I mentioned the cucumbers. I mentioned rattling the cages. I mentioned this is what happens when we perceive as monkeys unfairness. We get angry. We shake the bars of our cage, which is impotent rage. What am I talking about? I'm talking about this, one of my favorite 2.5-minute videos of all time.
So a final experiment that I want to mention to you is our fairness study. And so this became a very famous study, and there's now many more, because after we did this about 10 years ago, it became very well known.
Very quickly, fairness and compassion, those are the twin pillars of morality. You're going to see in those JFK files, which don't really talk about JFK, but do talk about what the CIA has been up to, overthrowing this, poisoning that, starving those. Not a lot of compassion in there. And we're going to find out from Elon's releases that there hasn't been a lot of fairness. The basic pillars of morality are under assault right now. That's a true revolution. I'm not saying it's inappropriate. They actually need to be questioned, examined, maybe rebuilt. This is how we begin to understand why it's so important.
And we did that originally with capuchin monkeys, and I'm going to show you the first experiment that we did. It has now been done with dogs, and with birds, and with chimpanzees. But with Sarah Brosnan, we started out with capuchin monkeys. So what we did is we put two capuchin monkeys side by side. Again, these animals, they live in a group. They know each other. We take them out of the group, put them in a test chamber. And there's a very simple task that they need to do. And if you give both of them cucumber for the task, the two monkeys side by side, they're perfectly willing to do this 25 times in a row. So cucumber, even though it's really only water in my opinion, but cucumber is perfectly fine for them. Now if you give the partner grapes, the food preferences of my capuchin monkeys correspond exactly with the prices in the supermarket. And so if you give them grapes, it's a far better food, then you create inequity between them.
Inequity.
So that's the experiment we did. Recently, we videotaped it with new monkeys who had never done the task, thinking that maybe they would have a stronger reaction, and that turned out to be right. The one on the left is the monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece she eats. Then she sees the other one getting grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber.
I love that.
She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again. So this is basically the Wall Street protest that you see here.
And we laugh because we can see ourselves in that so clearly, right? Now, that was the Wall Street protest. That's sort of the context of the time when this TED Talk was given. What about today? Well, today we see people attacking Tesla cars and trucks, right? And the outcome of all of this behavior is that over time, cheating just becomes a self-perpetuating norm. It's invisible, it's unethical to the insiders. And eventually you get statements like this. See if you can hear possibly any slightly coded threat from a senior senator from New York State. Obviously, you can see the Chrysler Building in the background, right? A senior senator, Chuck Schumer. See if you can find the coded threat in this. See if it's somehow his moral code has been rationalized to the point where he can no longer, it's invisible to him that he's operating in an unethical way.
We are mobilizing in New York. We have people going to the Republican districts and going after these Republicans who are voting for this and forcing them to either change their vote or face the consequences. This is
to either change their vote or face the consequences?
A long, relentless fight that we fight every day. And I am confident that we will bring Trump's popularity, numbers, and strength down if we keep at it and keep at it and keep at it.
And keep at what exactly? What exactly is the threat that's so profound for these people? Again, they're going to have a very hard time articulating that. But I think you can be, I'm pretty sure you are beginning to understand where I'm driving with this, right? So here's a second thing Bastiat said that's very important. I think we don't need to re-examine and reinvent. We could re-examine, but we don't need to reinvent what he came up with. He said the state is the great fiction through which everyone endeavors to live at the expense of everyone else. This is the free lunch model, okay? Now, look, the people who are really angry, who are shaking the cages, throwing the cucumbers back, they're very mad because, honestly, these people have all gotten cucumbers, right? Chuck Schumer's a grape dweller, and he doesn't want his grapes to go away either, but he's inciting the cucumber eaters to do things, and he should know better, and of course he does, but I don't think he really cares. So we saw, like, this just came out yesterday, that would be on March 19th, a masked male hunted down a woman. She's driving a Tesla in the Seattle area. That great crime of driving a Tesla. He follows her, swerves around in front, cuts her off, stops in the middle of the road, exits his vehicle. He's got a mask up over his face. Honestly, if she's armed, and this is going to happen sooner or later, pew, pew, right? This is a very violent situation, and he's berating her because telling her she's driving a Nazi car. Okay. Now, this is a cucumber thrower right here. He's very mad, but he doesn't know why. He doesn't understand why the game is unfair. He doesn't get any of that, but he can detect that the game is unfair, but he's taking it out now by throwing the cucumber at the wrong person. It's unfair. It's unfair. Like, how about this guy? He said that thing, which I'll let you read. He's at Mardi Gras, a little drunk, so that uninhibits people, but he sees a Tesla truck drive by, a Cybertruck, and he just comes up to it and he just starts wailing on it. Just some white dude, looks suburban. His wife comes over all embarrassed and hustles him off after he's like smashed into this thing. And anyway, he's super mad. Like, why is the person driving a car a goddamn Nazi, right? He can't explain it. Nobody can explain it. Here's the issue. He is facing this idea that he's had this free lunch and he can feel that free lunch is going away. And he's very mad about that. He just doesn't have the context to understand why it's happening. How about this? This is the guy who would have been vice president if the election had gone the other way, Tim Walz.
Saying on my phone, I don't know, some of you know this on the iPhone, they've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping. So...
Okay, he's a known communist, went to China a lot, has a lot of sympathy for communist things. He's been a communist his whole life. And obviously one defining feature of communists is they tear things down. They're less good at building things and having people survive by the millions in their home countries. But that's what his ideology is. And look at him. He's cheering on the destruction of the 7th largest company in America. People in his home state have pensions invested in this company, and he's cheering it on and getting applause because this is actually politically incoherent. At no point are you the good guy if you're cheering for the destruction of a large American company and you're an American. You're just not. Okay. Now, this is the nature, and I put the free lunch upside down because this guy's taking us to the opposite of a free lunch. He's about to give us a thing where we actually have no lunches anymore. Given enough time, this guy and people who think like him and all the people clapping and supporting all of this, they're going to destroy what we have in this country. And I'm not sure they can be reformed. I'm not sure you could sit down and spend enough time talking with him to get him to understand that what he's doing is wrong. Why? Because he's glorified it. He has a moral code that says, I'm going to hate on Elon and everything associated with Elon, and we're going to destroy his entire company if we can, because that's what my moral code justifies. But at the end of the day, this guy's moral code boils down to this. It's a great fiction. His great fiction and the people who follow him is that they get to live at the expense of everybody else. That's the ideology. The monkeys tell us that that's a very understandable thing. Okay? So here's the conclusion. Trump and Elon, you know what they're doing? They are rapidly undoing decades of institutionalized plunder. They're exposing it. Excuse me. It's been glorified, right? Sanctified. Innumerable paychecks deposited. And, excuse me, the DOJ, the SEC, EPA, all of them, rule books written, extensive rule books. The amount of graft and plunder cannot even be estimated at this point, but it's been running for decades. I am 99.9999% sure that trillions of dollars have been secretly created out of thin air, hidden, secreted in offshore accounts by the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And my worry is that those millions of offshore account holders all wake up one day and go, musical chairs, right? Wow, too many dollars have been created. How many? Trillions and trillions that nobody knew about. You know what? I better get rid of these dollars while I can. And next thing you know, hop, skip, and a jump, everything suddenly costs 100 times as much as the day before, and that's called the destruction of your currency system involved. This is how empires end, folks. When people lose faith in the most important, basic, primal system of distributed trust we have, money itself. So I produced a bunch of 3 full pieces of content relating to this very topic. It's that important for my subscribers. If you are a subscriber, thank you. And if you aren't, please consider becoming one. I want you to be safe. I want you to be secure. Everything begins with having the right mental model of understanding why these things are happening. And from that whyness, understanding the context of this, you will come to the same conclusion I think I've come to, which is this is not going to fix itself. This boat does not right itself. It capsizes and then sinks. That's just how it is. There's a huge disruptive path before us, and it's rooted in our biology. It's rooted in our evolution. It's rooted in our cultural traditions. And that's what the revolution is, to try and see if we can get this ship righted again in time. I'm not sure it can be. I'm hopeful. I'm going to work towards that end. But at the same time, I'm going to be planning as if maybe it's not going to work out quite like I want it to. So hope for the best, plan for the worst. That's my motto. So I'd rather be a year early than a day late to this particular story of becoming resilient. With that, thanks very much for listening. Come by Peak Prosperity. We would love to have you there. We're always having a rockin' good conversation. So until next time, thanks very much and enjoy your weekend. And let's talk about this topic down below in the comments. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. Bye for now. Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity, signing off.